Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense, your favorite podcast on the internet about wrestling and if it makes sense or not. So it's 2021. Hooray! Yep,
Whoop,
that's
whoa.
pretty much the reaction I expected. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here, guys. 2021 is gonna be spookily similar to 2020, but let's all spend the first couple of weeks of 2021 pretending that it'll be different. Okay, we'll do that right now, and we're gonna talk about some wrestling to take your mind off things, a little levity to the situation. So 2020 was full of ups and downs, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very accurate way of putting it. That's what I say, man. People are like, fuck 2020. I'm like, I tell you what, man, it was interesting.
It sure was.
Dude, every day there was a new fucking thing. You're like, wow, doesn't take a break, man. This is really interesting to sit back and watch. You're like, whoa, dude, how can all of this stuff happen at once? It's amazing.
It's also exhausting.
Oh yeah, after a while you're like, it has tomorrow it has to stop, right? Nope, nope, nope. And I felt like the wrestling world was a bit like that as well. Okay,
Mm.
no, I don't know if everybody else agrees with me, but I think by and large, the year 2020, with regards to professional wrestling, not so good. That's
Mm,
that's my opinion. And
we've had better years, haven't we?
yeah, I think so. I just don't like looking back on it now. You're like, did all of that shit really take place in one year?
Mm.
It's so we're gonna kind of talk about 2020 as a year for wrestling, and then maybe make some predictions about 2021. Who knows? But we're gonna talk about like what was good about 2020, wrestling wise. Obviously, we're not gonna.
Yes.
We got a little bit of structure. And we're also going to talk about what was not so good about 2020, which was most of it, again, wrestling related. So this should be a lot of fun. Let's start off with something positive though. John, who do you think were the best wrestlers of 2020, in your opinion?
I think no one really had a better year than Drew McIntyre.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not just in terms of, getting pushed to the world title, which has been a long, long time coming, but the quality of matches he was putting on were just fantastic. Like, every month it seemed like he was defending the title on pay-per-view. He was routinely having, like, if not the best match of the night, like one of the best matches of the night. And yeah, it's just it's really cool to see him like go on that journey where he lost his job with WWE and kind of well, after being bumped down the card and turned into a bit of a comedy act as well, and then to go back to the independent scene and sort of reinvent himself, get in the best shape of his life, and then get brought back to WWE and finally achieve this kind of prediction that Vince McMahon had about him being the chosen one like over a decade ago. It's been really cool to see that story unfold and for him to kind of live up to that potential as well.
I am inclined to agree. I feel like he's like the real star of 2020. That guy, every single time you saw him in a match, he was given everything he had. Like he really, and his matches have been really consistently good. You
Mm.
know, we talked about 2020 not being so good, not being so hot, but Drew McIntyre was like something completely different. Every single time you saw him, he was doing his best and putting on really good matches. So while it is kind of a shame that there isn't a live crowd there to kind of appreciate it, I feel like he's done such a good job in 2020 that like by the time the crowds do come back, he'll still be top contender. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so I agree with that. I would have liked to give a little honorable mention on the male side to
Hmm.
Randy Orton. because I think that Randy Orton has put on a lot of very entertaining matches as well. Some of them with Drew McIntyre, of course, but he's also, I mean, people forget that he was in the greatest wrestling match of all time.
Indeed.
You know, against Edge, and that was pretty good.
Well, that was good, but the match that they had at WrestleMania was decidedly not good.
It was a bit, yeah, and also he killed a guy.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, maybe that should automatically disqualify him from this.
Yeah, so Randy Orton killed a guy. Not just a guy, he killed beloved childhood TV presenter Bray Wyatt with a mask on, and burned him alive on fucking TV. Like everybody saw it. I saw it. Did you see? You saw Bray Wyatt burning to death, right?
Well, I saw like some sort of shape that looked vaguely like Bray Wyatt and was dressed vaguely like Bray Wyatt gets it on fire. But yeah,
we definitely saw a mannequin dummy being set on fire, but the implication was that it was Bray Wyatt that was burned alive. And I would just like to take a little opportunity, if I may, in the midst of this podcast, to derail it for one moment. Well, I say that 2020 brought us a lot of terrible, terrible things, and we called them out every single time we saw them. And 2020, at the end of 2020, Raw were doing some disastrous looking numbers. And right before TLC, it felt like the company's going to do a really big shake-up. They're going to change things. They're going to do something. They're going to see those ratings, and they're going to change their tune and put on some good TV. And then they burned a guy alive. And I'm like, are you shitting me? Of course this is how the year ends. Of course that's how the year ends, with them setting fire to quote-unquote their top babyface. What the fuck? What the fuck? So I would like to say an honorable mention we said that Drew McIntyre, you know, one of the best workers of 2020. And I'm not going to, but like, one of the worst things to happen in 2020 was the fucking Bray Wyatt stuff.
Yes.
Now, let me tell you, when The Fiend first came along, we were like, cool, we dig this guy's character, which I still do. The character's good. But fucking last year, 2 years ago now, back in 2019, we both kind of questioned how Bray Wyatt was going to take this character change and like work it into wrestling, right? The character is very intriguing. You got the good side, the Bray Wyatt thing with the hidden secrets that turns into the Fiend. Interesting. But what the fuck has that got to do with wrestling, right? Nothing, it turns out. So we've had a year and a half of this build to see what the Fiend is about. And it's been like letdown after letdown, wrestling-wise. Like, backstage-wise, skit-wise, it's great. The shit works. The character works in like the medium of film. Right? That shit works. But in the medium of wrestling, how many fucking dog shit matches have we seen with Bray Wyatt in them? We're going to go to 2019 to say that fucking, what was it, Hell in a Cell match? Or was it Elimination Chamber? It was a Hell in a Cell match.
It was Hell in a Cell, yeah.
Right, that sucked. That was awful. It was so bad I still remember how shitty it was, right? 2020, Bray Wyatt drowned Braun Strowman. He did something at WrestleMania. He didn't have a wrestling match with John Cena.
No.
He had some kind of interaction with John Cena, so that doesn't count as a wrestling match. You strike that from the record. What the fuck else? Well, he got set on fire, of course.
He had a match with Goldberg at Super Showdown.
Yeah, look at this big scary Fiend. And he got beat by a guy with twice his age who hasn't wrestled in forever.
Yep.
Like, what? Like, how do you take that guy seriously? Like, but he's got supernatural powers. Why did he use those supernatural powers to take down a 60-year-old man? What the fuck? Like, Bray Wyatt as the Fiend and his silly bullshit shenanigans that have gone on with these stupid ass cinematic matches. Oh, we're getting to that. But it's just been like nonsense the whole year. It's just nonsense. Like,
I know, man. I know. And the thing is, like, it isn't getting better as well. Like, you think, like, at some point, like, something might click and they might figure out how to present this character and, make the feuds interesting and the matches make sense. And no, it's just,
Mm-mm.
oh, God, it's such a chore every fucking time he's in the ring. And
Right.
the thing is, we know he's a good wrestler as well. We've seen him have good matches in the past, but this gimmick it's just like derailed him.
Right. So hopefully now that he is burned to death, they're gonna do a reboot on the character, which means no more cinematic matches. But
Hmm.
like, what do you mean reboot him? Like you said, he's just rebooted him. 2019?
Yeah.
That's not that long ago, dude. What's he gonna reinvent himself as now? Like what's the next step for the Fiend? Because he's still a Fiend.
Hmm.
So is he just gonna have a different job now? He's no longer a kids TV presenter. He's just like a bin man or something. Like what the fuck? I don't know. I'm gonna put not Bray Wyatt as a worker, but Bray Wyatt the Fiend as a concept
Mm.
into like one of the worst things that has ever happened. Not just in 2020. Just like, but we sat through all of that shit. We had to sit through all that shit. People
Yeah.
are gonna be like, "What was the worst thing about the pandemic?" I'm like, "The fucking Bray Wyatt matches." Jesus Christ. Well, any cinematic matches, we'll get to them in a second. I am on the good side. I'd also like to shout out my favorite of all time, evidently, Asuka,
Hmm.
because again, she's done a really good job with all the stuff that she's been given, and a lot of the time the stuff she's been given hasn't really made a whole lot of sense, but she's fucking ran with it. After Becky Lynch took some time off to have her pregnancy, Asuka was the number one girl on that show because there was no
Mm.
Becky Lynch and there was no Charlotte, so she had to hold up that division by herself, which she pretty much did. Her on the Raw side, and
Sasha and Bailey on
Sasha
the
and Bailey on the
SmackDown.
other side.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would definitely give the nod to Asuka because I think she did a really really good job. But at the same time, an equally balanced shot could be given to Bailey and to Sasha Banks. I would say Bailey more so because she really was like all over that division right up until the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I think that Sasha Banks is still she's the right person to have that belt, and she has also worked her ass off in
Mm.
2020 to put on some really fun stuff. Asuka versus Sasha Banks, we got that how many times last year? And I'm like, I'd still watch it again. I watch
Yeah.
that shit over and over again. I would watch that shit over the Bray Wyatt nonsense any day of the week. Even with a screwy finish, just give it to me. Because at least it's wrestling, right? At least nobody
Hmm.
drowns. Why do people have to constantly die? I'm just, oh, come on. Like, it happens a lot. Didn't
It
they drown Matt
does.
Hardy in All Elite Wrestling?
Was that All
Was
Elite
was it
Wrestling
this?
or was that? No, it might have been back at Impact, wasn't it?
Was that not in the? Remember the Stadium Stampede match where they went to the swimming pool in the stadium
Oh
for some
God,
reason?
yeah.
Did
Oh
they
yeah,
drown
they
him
kept
there?
drowning him and then he kept being reincarnated. It's like uh
Let me lay that sentence out for anybody who doesn't watch wrestling. In a stadium, in an American football stadium, what 10 wrestlers were having a fight, and so some of them went to the swimming pool part of the American football stadium where they repeatedly drowned a very well-known figure in popular pro wrestling, and instead of drowning he reincarnated himself every time that he quote unquote drowned. That was a pro wrestling match in 2020.
but then even when he was like supposedly reincarnated, there was like no difference between the gimmicks as well. So
He
it's
just
just
talked like a fucking idiot.
yeah. Oh, good grief. Like
But wouldn't it
and
have
it's
been worse though if he just like, and now I'm in a different costume? Then
yeah.
they drown him and he's like, now I'm over here. And they look down and there's no Matt Hardy in the pool. And he's really like on the other side of the stadium, because he can
Hmm.
teleport. Why didn't he teleport?
Yeah, well, apparently, I mean, Who the fuck knows?
That's exactly the point with The Fiend and with Matt Hardy. They're very selective with their grandiose powers, aren't they?
Mm.
They could do all sorts of magic tricks, localized to very specific things.
I mean, to be fair, you could probably say that about The Undertaker as well. Like, way back in the day, I'm sure he was, like, shooting bolts of lightning and stuff, so...
Right, but also, like, that would kind of happen during his entrance, right?
Mm.
Or at the end of a match. He wouldn't stop in the middle of a traditional, old-school football stadium swimming pool match to shoot lightning bolts out of his fingers for no reason. Right? That didn't happen in the match. That wasn't detrimental to it. So my point is, I would have said Asuka, Sasha Banks, or Bayley.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with that. Those would be my top three, and I guess I'd throw in the mix as well. Io Shirai's had a really good year in NXT.
Mm-hmm.
And over in AEW, I'd say Shida's really stepped up as women's champion, even though she's not always had like the best competition to go against. I think she's done a good job of like course correcting the women's title a little bit, where it was kind of it was in a bad place, I'd say, with what's her name? Nyla Rose. Yes. And
okay.
But yeah, she's kind of done some good stuff. And Britt Baker as well, not so much for the wrestling, but like as a character, she's been so good this year.
I would have said Britt Baker would I had a shot because she's done a pretty good job of getting herself over in 2020. Hikaru Shida, I don't know about because I mean the problem with them is they have shitty booking. Like they don't book the women's division. Right? Like you could say, oh, at least, you know, Asuka had some weird stuff to work with, but she made it work, right?
Yeah.
Hikaru Shida didn't have anything to work with. She would just have a championship match every so often. That's not fair to her. She's not getting storylines that she could, like, how do we know if she could handle this shit or not? Because she's not getting the chance to, because they're not giving her the chance. And they're not giving that chance to anybody. Or any of the females. That's what's unfair. They don't have anything to work with, so we don't know. You know, other than seeing them in a wrestling match. Although, at least, thank God, they're in a wrestling match.
Yes.
And the problem with Britt Baker is that she was in a tooth and nail match in 2020 because it never ends.
Of course.
Does it? It's just relentless. Let's hear some more fucking bullshit. And here's a surprise for you, my friend. Did not care much for the tooth and nail match.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
But what about when Britt Baker got injected with some Novocaine?
Dude, what she does in her off time is her own business. You don't have to publicize that. You know, that was unnecessary. Oh, dear. So those were some good things.
Mm-hmm. Mixed with some bad things as well.
But that's the problem. There's too many bad things.
Yes.
Far, far, far too many bad things. And, you know, obviously we got to talk about some of them. But, like, we spent 2020 talking about them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, all we want, you and me, the two of us, is for wrestling to just fucking stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just, why are they giving us shit to make fun of? Why don't they just put on good matches? That's what we want. We wanted to see good fucking wrestling. We don't want to see all this comedy bullshit. Fucking Stadium Stampede, fucking Mimosa Madness matches, you know. Well, here's the thing: like, who put on the better cinematic match? Was it All Elite Wrestling, or was it WWE, or would you rather both of them stopped fucking doing them?
I mean, we've talked before. Like, I think we both agree that the only halfway decent cinematic match of all of last year was the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and Undertaker at WrestleMania. But then a lot of that was to do, I mean, like, it was pretty decent on the night, but, like, it's been made to look so much better by all the other shit that's followed it. Like,
right.
The other cinematic match has been so bad that now the Boneyard match looks like a fucking masterpiece.
Isn't that weird? Like, usually you wouldn't expect the first match to still not necessarily to hold up, but like you wouldn't still expect it to be the best one.
No.
Because they're still working some things out that usually kind of get smoothed out by the second or third kind of gimmick thing, right? But because nobody figured out what a cinematic match is supposed to be, it all turned to garbage pretty quickly. And the Boneyard match was good because it still had like some kind of semblance of a fight, of like realism, right? It did look like a fucking film fight scene, which was disappointing. But you still kind of felt like these two guys were fighting. Whereas in all the other ones, they all seem so gimmicky and so fucking ridiculous that you're like, well, this just is a film scene now. These aren't wrestlers anymore. They're actors. And I don't want to watch that. You know, like me and Bryce were having this argument the other day. I was talking about how much I hated the Matt Hardy nonsense, the ultimate deletion shit.
Yeah.
And he said, but you enjoy all the hardcore championship shenanigans from the year 2000. Aren't they the same? And I'm like, they're not the same because they're framed in the basis of wrestling. The idea with the hardcore championship was that people wanted the belt, the wrestling belt, and they were able to acquire that belt through fighting.
Yeah.
That's the medium. And so if it's a 24/7 championship, people can understandably win or lose the championship in an airport because the parameters that we've been given allow that. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense because the belt is involved. If Crash Holly and the Mean Street Posse were having a fight in an airport without the belt, nobody would give a shit. Because there's no point to it. That's not a wrestling match. It's just a bunch of fucking guys fighting in an airport. They're not to see him. And it's I don't think you can look at a cinematic thing like the Ultimate Deletion matches or Bray Wyatt's Swamp thing and say that they're the same as a 24/7 championship skirmish. Because those are silly, ridiculous things, but still done in the frame of wrestling. That's the point. They're in a wrestling show because they still have a tenuous connection to wrestling, whereas the other stuff doesn't. It's just the tenuous connection to wrestling is the wrestlers themselves. People you've seen on WWE television are now in a swamp, right? That's the connection, and that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a wrestling match. You know, whenever Hulk Hogan was on, what was he on? Days of Thunder?
I think that's right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, was that a wrestling match? Because Hulk Hogan was in it, and sometimes he'd fight people. What more do you need? You know, Okay, let me ask you this then, real quick. Well, I think we've already established by now that we're not fans of the cinematic match.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
What's been the worst cinematic match of 2020?
Well, I mean, special mention goes to the Elite Deletion match between Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara, but I think the reason why I didn't like that so much is just because I absolutely hated that entire feud so much, and like the whole thing kind of ties into my hatred of Matt Hardy this year, who's just had the worst year of anyone. But the worst cinematic match.
Sorry, can we put Matt Hardy alongside Bray Wyatt then?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Isn't that's totally fair? It's the same deal, exactly the same deal. It's like there's good in there. We've seen both those guys be good wrestlers. Why the fuck aren't they doing that? This is a wrestling show. Give us that shit. We don't want the entertainment. That's the point.
But he's been so like manic as well in terms of like, oh, 1 week he's this gimmick, the next week he's that gimmick, and like, oh, now he's a heel all of a sudden, even though he's like just got this big babyface victory over Sammy Guevara to finish the feud. It's like, whoa, what the fuck? What's going on? Just pick a lane and stick in it, you prick.
Well, I do agree with almost all of those points. The one point I disagree with is that he's not a heel because there are no heels and baby faces in All Elite Wrestling.
Fair enough.
And at first I was super annoyed at that phrase, that there are no heels and faces in All Elite Wrestling. But then when you watch the show and remember that, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm watching it going, I don't know who the heels and baby faces are, right? which is annoying to me because you want somebody to root for. But then when you watch it and remember that doesn't matter, then you're like, oh, okay. Like, to me, that dilutes the wrestling part of it as well, because you need somebody to root for it. But like, the whole show seems to be literally based around it doesn't matter who the good guys and the bad guys are. So Matt Hardy is a face. No, he's not a face because there are no faces.
Yeah,
Matt Hardy's just a regular guy. He's just a regular teleportation wizard from the 12th century. What, I don't even know what the backstory is.
But
he's just a regular, normal, whatever that is. It's a normal wizard. You know? Shades of gray.
Yeah, shades of shit, more like.
Anyway, so you're not gonna pick that one.
No, my worst cinematic match would be the Money in the Bank matches, which are just god awful.
Oh, I'm gonna give you plenty of opportunity to slag it off, but there's this one bit. Fair play to them for this, because I hated that match when I watched it too. But there's one bit that I just can't. It'll just every so often will just pop into my head and make me laugh, and I'm like, at least they gave you something memorable. It's the bit where Dana Brooke like is in the office and she picks up the briefcase, and then obviously it's not the right briefcase because all of the people in that match know what the rules to that match are, and they already know that there's a ring on the roof with the briefcase in it. So obviously it's not going to be just hanging out in some fucking office. But she turns around and she sees Stephanie McMahon, who has clearly not turned up.
Yeah.
Like, she just filmed it from home. Like, the quality of the footage is way off, and her sound's way off. They're, Dana Brooke, I don't think it's forever. And then Dana's like, oh, wow, Stephanie, I can't believe that. Like, and then somebody puts a painting, like, they hit Dana Brooke over the head with a painting, so like she goes through the painting, through the canvas. So for the rest of the thing, she's just walking around. She doesn't take it off for fucking ages. She's just walking around with a painting on her, and I'm like, that's such a stupid gag, but I love it, right? I have a real affinity for like these really old school gags like that because nobody does them anymore. It's the kind of thing you would see in like a 1930s cartoon. Right, and you never see them anymore. But that painting thing, I'm like, to be honest, that's what saved that match for me. I mean, it was not a good match by any means, but that bit made me laugh, and the Stephanie McMahon bit, like that section, I'm like, that's so strange that, I enjoyed that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I definitely didn't enjoy it.
Not even the painting.
No, that didn't do anything for me. I hated the fact that there was all these like really lame cameos in it as well, like Brother Love and like some random guy dressed as Doink the Clown who clearly wasn't Doink the Clown. It's just like, I don't know, like Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman eats a sandwich.
It's just so uninspired. Like, it's like all the guys who are just going to be in the office anyway, like Brother Love and John Laurinaitis and Vince.
Johnny is on his fucking scooter.
Yeah.
He's just sitting down. You lazy sack of shit. Get up.
And then there was like the Undertaker room as well, where AJ Styles kind of gets thrown into and he starts freaking out. But
right. It's like, does he think the room is like the manifestation of the Undertaker? Like, just leave the room, dude.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Aleister Black locks the door as if he's stuck in there, and then AJ just comes back later with like no explanation. Oh, okay.
But that's one of those things where like I remember watching it, and when you watch it, like he closed the door. I don't know if he locked the door, but he definitely closed the door. And they're stupid enough to film it like that, so I'm like, well, all right,
the whole thing was just conceptually stupid. Like the very start of the match, you got Asuka like jumps off like
Yes.
that little platform and takes everyone out, and she eventually gets in the elevator and starts going up. But then we don't see her for 2 minutes, and then well, no, more like 5 minutes, and then
Mhm.
when she does finally reappear, like the elevator's just stopped on the like the second floor or something. So she's basically taken 5 minutes to
Right.
go up to
But
the
like,
second floor when she could have just walked up the stairs.
it's like, however, like she obviously doesn't go to the top, right? So
Yeah.
God knows how far she does get up. But like, she sits in the elevator for so long because you see everybody else like brawling and shit. So she's in the elevator forever. Then she gets out, and everybody's like still hot in her tail.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck? Like, how slow is that fucking elevator?
And then
Uh,
don't even get us started on the ending as well with like the people getting thrown off the edge of the building and stuff and
mhm.
more people getting murdered. Like fucking hell. It,
Right. Like, this is a weird year, dude. In a year where there's a big pandemic and people are legitimately dying, the WWE are like, we're gonna have more people die on our TV show than ever before. What the fuck, man?
yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good shot.
What
I
would
can.
your cinematic match
You
be?
already know what it is. The whole world knows what it is. It's the Stampede match, the
Of
Stadium Stampede
course.
match. This, first of all, 50 minutes.
Was it really 50 minutes? Bloody hell.
I don't think I need to say anything else, right?
Yeesh.
There's a wrestling ring in the stadium, like on the football pitch. Why? Why? So like, well, why do they get into the ring? Like, why do they do that? If they're just gonna brawl all over the place anyway, why would they do that? It was
Mm,
like that was like a film because it had all these little self-contained stories that you just had to wait and see how they played out before we got to the next one. And it wasn't great. Like, their acting leaves a lot to be desired. And it was one of those fucking cinematic things where they had to act. There was a lot of talking in it. It was just
mm.
fighting. There was all sorts of shenanigans going on. They did all sorts of fucking dumb shit that I don't like. There was a swimming pool for some reason, and they drowned Matt Hardy a bunch of times. They almost tried to run over Sammy Guevara again. There was a horse. There was
Hey,
a
I like
horse.
the horse.
Right. But why is there a horse? And the
Because he's a
horseman,
cowboy.
the cowboy rides a horse through a football stadium. Again, what part of the wrestling is that involved? And then the cowboy goes to the bar and just drinks, and his friend drinks a milk. And that bit went on forever, and it was
Mm.
really fucking annoying. That whole part, him doing the fucking um, what do you call it? What's the name of that fucking suplex? Northern Light suplex.
Yeah. Oh,
All
jeez.
the way down that fucking football stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Hated that because the Northern Light suplex it's one of the most beautiful moves in all of wrestling. If you
Mm.
do it right, it's a piece of art. It's beautiful. It's like ballet, the Northern Light suplex. And
Yeah.
how dare one of the Jacksons, I don't know which one.
I think it was Matt.
They're both idiots. If you're listening to this, guys, you're not listening to this. You're both idiots. I hated that spot. What didn't one of them was the same one like fucking break his ribs after doing a dive off the top of the football um, goal?
Yeah, I think so.
He was told not to do it, but he did it anyway because he's a big rebel. Jericho walking around with a fucking traffic cone on his head.
Oh, God, yeah.
The ending annoyed me the most. Out of all the shit we'd seen, I'm like, that's how you put a cap on this piece of shit. Like, who do they get? Is it Sammy Guevara?
Yeah.
Because why not torture this poor child some more? Good lord, Sammy Guevara does not. Haven't you done enough to him? Come on, man.
Apparently not, yeah.
Good lord. So Kenny Omega gets him up on top of some kind of like box, like some kind of viewer box, right? It's with a kind of, so they get on top of that and they do some shitty looking brawling, and then Kenny Omega hooks him up for his finishing move, and he jumps off the side of the thing onto like a clearly padded whatever.
Yeah.
Like whatever that is that he jumped onto was like it's been put there just for that spot.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't dress it up. They didn't pretend it was something else. At least the WWE would have been like, "Oh, watch out for that electrical equipment" or some shit like that, right? They don't just put a fucking bouncy castle in the middle of the thing, you know. They dress it up. They just all they wrestling like just jump into these boxes. And like, well, why are those boxes there? It's a giant football stadium. What's that? What's it for? Why is it there? Why is there a wrestling there? Why is there a swimming pool there? Why is this 50 minutes long? Why is the
Just
bar
why?
open? Why is the bar open? The rest of the stadium's not open. Who's running the bar? Listen to me, my friend. If you were in charge of a stadium and 10 wrestlers came by and said, "Hey, we want to fight in your stadium," the one fucking thing you're going to do is make sure your bar is closed.
Yeah.
You're going to lock that fucker up. You ain't letting them anywhere near it.
Well, it's okay if you own the stadium like Tony Khan does.
Now, there's a horse in it. What happened to the horse?
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Never saw the horse again. You could argue the horse was the fucking hero of the whole piece. Disappeared. No more horse. Bring the horse back. Make the horse All Elite Wrestling Champion. Kenny Omega versus a horse?
I'd pay to watch
2021,
that.
baby. It's gonna happen. Has Kenny Omega wrestled a horse? I guarantee you he's wrestled somebody with a horse mask on.
Yeah, I mean, he's wrestled like an 8-year-old girl and like a blow-up doll, so...
Oh, and he's their champion now. What a fucking... Can I just say, right? What part of either of those two matches that we just described makes them sound like a wrestling match?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the fuck? Where have we gone?
Yeah.
Is this what passes for entertainment these days?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, I kind of appreciate the big swing that they make in these matches in terms of like, you know, this has been a shitty year and people want to be entertained, but like them going and doing these things hasn't been entertaining. Not to us.
No.
So,
No, sir.
I mean, I appreciate them like doing something out of the box and trying something new and different and not just giving us the same old, but man, it did not work. And I hope we don't ever have to watch this shit again.
Well, here's the thing, man. They tried something new and it didn't really work. So that's when they all collectively should have said, well, let's stop doing that. But instead they thought, no, let's keep doing it, but worse. I don't know if I agree with that philosophy, man. So, all right, we've talked about what is easily some of the worst, quote-unquote, matches. I refuse to call either of those things matches, but what were your favorite matches? What's the best thing you've seen wrestling-wise in 2020? And you can't say Billy Kidman versus Tajiri from that episode of Velocity.
Oh, man.
Because that happened in 2002. 2002. Oh my goodness. Almost 20 years ago, man. We haven't seen a match like it.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I'd say we did actually have some pretty good wrestling this year. Like, I would say, I really enjoyed Edge versus Orton with the greatest wrestling match ever. Even though it wasn't the greatest wrestling match ever, it was still
pretty good.
Yeah, even with like all the bells and whistles and stuff that they threw in there with like the fancy camera angles and whatnot. But Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles was really good as well for the Intercontinental title on SmackDown. Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the NXT title at WrestleMania was really good as well, but kind of marred a bit because, like, I'm not one of those people who kind of is always down when Charlotte wins titles and stuff, but it felt like that was a good opportunity to kind of put Rhea Ripley over and make her a big deal that they kind of let pass them by a bit. And like a couple more, like I'd say the Sasha Banks versus Bayley match at Hell in a Cell was a thing of beauty. I thought that was like, you know, Sasha Banks has become like the MVP of Hell in a Cell matches over the last few years. Every single one she's had has been just fantastic. She's done stuff in them which has looked original and come across as like brutal looking as well. So that was really good. But I think my favorite was Walter versus Ilya Dragunov for the NXT UK title,
Hmm.
which was just, oh man, they beat the shit out of each other, and it was a joy to watch.
It was, yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's gonna be in a lot of. I hope that's gonna be a lot of people's like favorite match of 2020 because it's such a surprise.
Yeah.
Like nobody like. I think people knew it was gonna be a good match. Those two guys are really good, Walter and Dragunov. They're both very good. I don't think anybody expected to be that good. And
Well,
really
they have had matches on the independent scene before, like of a similar quality and like hard hittingness to it as well. So I think everyone knew they were capable of that. But the fact that they did it in that environment as well, where there's no crowd and no, you know, Thunderdome, no, just like atmosphere, but they created an atmosphere. And yeah, it just worked out really well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I liked that match. I really liked Orton versus McIntyre. I think it was at SummerSlam.
Mm.
It was just like a solid fucking match with two pros. You know,
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. And also, like a lot of the Asuka stuff has been a lot of fun. Like the Asuka Sasha Banks stuff. You know, that happened a lot. But I'm like, I'll happily watch this shit all day. But for me, hands down, match of the year, Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor. Oh my goodness, I just love that match. I could watch it over and over again. And that was one of those weird things where like, why aren't people doing this? It's like
Yeah.
for the Ilya Dragunov and Walter thing. You're like, they make it look really stiff. But you know those guys, like you said, they've worked together before. They know how to work with each other. So like, they made it look really stiff while it was probably really safe. That match looked better and was safer than like a ton of those other like cinematic matches because they're like all gimmicky and doing stuff. Oh, look, we're jumping off things on the other thing. Like nobody died, right? Sure, that's a
Well,
plus.
no one died, yeah, but they did like injure each other though, didn't they? Like broken jaws and
That's
stuff.
the thing. Like I admit that in the Finn Balor Kyle O'Reilly one, they may have laid things in a little too snug. They were a little bit too rough with each other, and but like it made it look real because you could tell that part of it was real, and that's easier to identify and to empathize with than like one of those cinematic matches, because then you're just watching a film. But when you watch a match like Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor or Ilya Dragunov versus Walter, you understand the conflict and you get into the story. Like you understand the story as it goes through. It lays it all out there and you can figure it out and you can watch it and it all makes sense because it's in the confines of wrestling and it just looks like two guys trying to beat the hell out of each other. And they do in the case of Balor versus O'Reilly. Like they really laid it into each other. But that's fun to watch, and like the injuries aside, it's still like I'd rather watch a match like that where people get injured in that way. I don't mean like a broken jaw, but you know what I mean. Like people get injured in wrestling as a consequence of the things they do to each other. So I would rather see two people kind of get injured. Not that sounds weird. Take it out of context. I would like to see two people get injured, but like they got injured in the confines of that match because they were just having a wrestling match. Whereas if you get injured by jumping off a goalpost, onto a thing, like you got injured, then you got injured for being a dumbass.
Exactly. It's not like unnecessary stunts or whatever.
Exactly. Like they at some point you just end up getting your strain in trying to reinvent wrestling. You end up straying further away from what wrestling was, And the irony of it is, because we've seen so little of it in 2020, the best wrestling matches, in my opinion, were the matches that actually were the closest to old school wrestling. Because it was nothing like it. We were just full of this Mickey Mouse fucking bullshit ass garbage. Mickey Mouse fucking bullshit ass garbage is another fantastic sentence, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the t-shirt.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and make that t-shirt. Well, you know what I mean. Like, we'd rather watch a good wrestling match than all this gimmicky bullshit. And so I was super happy to see that match because it was like a breath of fresh air, and it was with some guys that could work, quality dudes, and just blew my fucking socks off. And I've seen a bunch of like different kind of polls and questionnaires and things asking about other people's, what were your matches of 2020? I've seen a lot of them, dude, and like none of them, not a fucking one said Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor.
Really?
Are you shitting me? I'm not adding. I'm not doing your poll. I'm not, because there's like a little other box you can put in. I'm like, I'm not even gonna do it. Because I'm not even. No, I'm not gonna play. Because for me, like, I thought that was the match of the year, and I'm gonna go watch it again soon.
Well, they've got the rematch on this week's NXT, so when this show goes up, it will already have happened.
Yeah, this show will go up on a Thursday, so the day before, the day after, no, the day you're listening to the show, then the day before that it happened. I'm confused myself.
Yeah.
It's very easily done. Yeah. All right. This show goes up on a Thursday, so by the time you listen to the show, you'll already know what happens. I'm gonna watch that. Ooh. Oh wait, I can't because it's not on the network.
Not until next week, I guess.
God damn it! Why would they do this to me?
Well, you could always get BT Sports, and then you could watch it.
Oh, BT Sports, I suck my dick. 2021 not starting off to great start by depriving me of what could easily be the match of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine we get the match of the year in the first week, and you're like, there you go. You're not gonna like the rest of it.
I mean, if they told us it was the match of the year in the first week, and then we knew we didn't have to watch everything else, that would be okay. But
that's the funny thing, man. Like, if we'd have stopped after the greatest wrestling match of 2020, we wouldn't have missed a whole lot.
Yeah.
We could have been like, well, it's not gonna get any better than that. See you later, boys. Oh dear. So yeah, 2020, quite a year. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight from 2020 as best or worst, or anything else you think deserves a mention?
Well, I was going to ask, what would you say was your biggest disappointment of the year and your biggest surprise of the year?
Biggest disappointment? I think, again, this will be a surprise to everybody, but I think my biggest disappointment this year is probably All Elite Wrestling, man.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted that shit to be good, and I don't think it is. I think it's like blatantly not good, but everybody wants it to be good so bad that they think it's good, and that sucks, man, because it's not. It's just all over the place, and it's hot garbage, and it's the same as the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. It's the same. It's the same bullshit as the WWE do, and I'm fed up with that. So why would I want it twice? I'm like, I feel like it's such a missed opportunity. Because they have good people on their roster. They seem like a really cool place to work for. Like, the shit they did for Brody Lee was incredible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They did a great job with that stuff. And I'm like, you can do good stuff. You have the people. You have the talent. You have the producers backstage. You got all this stuff, man. Make a better product. That's my... That and The Miz winning the Money in the Bank. Because now I got to see that fucking prick on TV.
Yeah, but he loses all the time, so it's not that bad, I guess.
Right, so why give him the briefcase? Now he has to be on TV.
Yeah.
Fucking be. Why? I hate a wacky idea, dude. Why don't they give it to John Morrison?
Well, why don't they do anything with John Morrison? Like...
Why don't they do something with John Morrison? Listen, WWE, if you're listening, fucking do something with John Morrison. I don't even care if it involves The Miz. Right? I prefer it if it didn't. But just do something with John Morrison. He's a hell of a hand. Use him for fuck's sake. But don't use him in some kind of bullshit cinematic match. I will go to wherever you live. Connecticut? Stanford, Connecticut?
Yep.
Oh, no. You know what? I was gonna say something like, I'm gonna go to your office and blah blah, but then that could be taken as a threat.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, I mean, I don't live anywhere near Stanford, and all the flights from my house are not going anywhere right now, but I'm just gonna not implicate myself in any kind of crime.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So what was your biggest surprise then, if that was your biggest disappointment?
Ooh, I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to think about that. You already put me in the spot with that one. Biggest surprise. I'm sure I could think of something. But I can't really think of. Well, what about you? What did you think was the biggest letdown and the biggest surprise?
Well, I mean, letdown. Obviously, like not having any crowds in shows has been really tough on the product. Like it's just sapped the atmosphere from it in a way that has, I think it's even affected the ratings a lot as well, because without a crowd, wrestling just isn't as fun. But I think probably the biggest disappointment of the year though was the like just hearing all the stories come out from the speaking out movement over the summer, and like realizing just how many shitbags were in wrestling and abusing their positions, and just the worst people, that a lot of them who you kind of you're fans of or you looked up to or whatever, and to realize that all these like people who you respected never really deserved that respect and shouldn't have been anywhere near wrestling is kind of left a sour taste in the mouth. And like and you think about all the people that they've hurt along the way as well, and it's awful. Like honestly, it almost put me off wrestling for a little while because that's how bad it was. But
yeah, dude, I totally get where you're coming from. Like for a lot, there was a while where you're like my interest in wrestling was diminishing anyway, given the quality that we've had to sit through. But whenever that happened, you're like, I mean, this sucks for everybody. It was just a bad time, and it really did kind of make you feel bad for being a wrestling fan.
Oh, absolutely.
You're like, wow, I support some of these guys. That's sucked. Yeah, that was a crazy, crazy time. Well,
I'd say in terms of the biggest surprise, like as a positive, I would go for Roman Reigns' heel turn. Like, I mean, it's something everyone's been kind of clamoring for years, basically, just to kind of freshen up his character and give him like some, a new dimension. And he finally does it, but he does it so well that it's taken him to like a whole new level now, and he's just adapted to that role brilliantly, and he's like delivering good matches which are different. Like they have a different feel to them as well. Like he's just stepped it up in such a big way and made that work incredibly. You kind of just, the only thing I wish is that he'd been able to come back and do it earlier in the year so we could have had more of it. But yeah,
that's a good one, man. I take that one. I don't know what I would pick though. I mean, I agree with you on that Roman Reigns stuff. He's been doing a good job. He's been doing some different stuff, some really interesting kind of storyline stuff that I think is starting to pay off.
Definitely.
I don't know what as a surprise though. I'd like to say I think that MVP coming back in 2020 and being so good. I don't know if that's a surprise, but like nobody kind of like he just kind of turned up at the Royal Rumble or whatever, and people were like, "Well, that's nice," but like he's a major part of that show. No,
yeah,
he's one of the fucking best parts of it.
Absolutely.
Like this time last year, could we have said that? I don't know, man. Maybe that's a surprise.
What about Pat McAfee? Like stepping in the
Ah,
ring and like completely overperforming.
well, that was really good too. That was a pleasant surprise. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a good one because he didn't kind of he put a lot more work in than I thought he would. Um, as regards to like putting the match together and what he could do. So that was quite surprising. Yeah, that's a good one too. It's a really good one. He's been doing some good shit too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. All right. Anything else you want to say about 2020?
Um,
Except fuck you, 2020.
yeah, good riddance to it.
See you later. Yeah, here comes 2021. Hooray. Did you see that video that WWE made where Drew McIntyre is fighting 2020?
Yeah, yeah.
Should we put that on our list of shitty things to say in 2020? Because that
Yep.
was I couldn't believe that. I'm like, are you shitting me? Who is in their 3D department? Because they need to have a word with those people.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like they're stealing all of your money.
Yeah.
That was shocking. I think it's a great way to end things, isn't it? 2020 was a hell of a year. It had a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wild ride, man. But we all got through it together. We're all here on the other side. It's 2021 now. We can only hope. We can only hope that things are going to be different, at least with regards to wrestling. However, we already know that we're going to get Drew McIntyre versus Goldberg for the Heavyweight Championship at the Royal Rumble in like 2 weeks' time.
Uh,
So let's not hold our breath. There's still plenty of time for them to fuck things up. I believe we're going to talk about that on a different episode. But I think we'll
yes.
wrap things up for now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, happy 2021, everybody. Have a good one, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.